I think, yep, there we go.
How are you?
Good. It's a good day. I'm still getting some good traction on that article. Like now it's on the front page of the Huffington Post. So again, like please watch some previous episodes about our thoughts on repeating yourself and about how old becomes new again, and it's never really old. Because yeah, that's great. It's like been driving some really great traffic to Highrise again. So it's been nice.
Did they ask you to syndicate that? On how'd that work?
Yeah, so it's there's a lot of nice people they're being very nice these days about syndication. Like I've been approached in the past by a couple people. Like Fast Company's also been really good about this, and maybe everybody is. Maybe I'm just I'm new to all of this, but yeah, Huffington Post is very like non-exclusive. Like let's maybe cross-post your piece, and you still have all the rights to put it wherever you want and do whatever you want with it anywhere else too. So it was like, sure, I'll put it somewhere else. Because it's not one of those things. Like I think a lot of people get nervous about cross-posting and letting another company own your, put their work on, because Google has like a canonical search kind of SEO thing where like they don't want to show the same results constantly. So they try and find like the ultimate source of a thing. But I'm not trying to get search engine optimization here. I'm just trying to tell a cool story. And if you like it, hopefully you'll go visit Highrise. There's really nothing about search related to it. So it's like, I don't really care where you find it. I doubt you're going to be looking for it on Google. So it's
I just got asked to Time Magazine wanted to republish a couple things I wrote, and not in the paper, but not in the magazine, but online.
Yeah.
And I gave them permission to do it, those 2 articles. But part of me always thinks a little bit about like, I'm basically then writing for Time for free, because Time's putting my article up. They're selling ads against my work, because they're selling ads against everything, right? That's their business model. I don't see any of that income. Yes, they link up the original source, but of course it's downplayed. So really, it seems like I'm writing content for Time for free, and I don't really care. It's not like I'm not going to eat lunch because of that. It's not my business, but it's more like a fundamental, basic thing about what, like, their argument would be, what's in it for you is exposure, and my argument would be, if I was making the argument, I'm not, because I gave them permission to publish it, but it's like, I can't eat lunch on exposure. Like, if I was a writer, for example, and that's not my primary job, so it doesn't really matter. But if I was syndicating a bunch of free content elsewhere for other people to make money off of it without you making any money off it, doesn't seem like a really fair deal, personally. So I've always kind of struggled with syndication in that way. But I think it's about making the choice. So like, in this case, I'm totally fine with it. But I think in general, the industry doesn't share revenue with its writers in that way, and I think that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I agree. I have no argument against that. And they do. It's a very awkward conversation. When I was approached by Fast Company to write some unique pieces, as well as they were interested in even syndicating some stuff, they were totally willing to pay me. I mean, it was a moderate sum, but they were like, and I don't even know if they did anymore. It was like part of an experimental Fast Company Labs kind of thing. So it seemed like very, it was very good thinking, generous thinking. But like I saw it again, like I got invited, none of these places are paying me for my work. And like, I think, they're just hoping like, I'm going to be that carrot of exposure or links back. And like, I don't know, like the Huffington Post one was good because like they didn't edit it at all. No editorial control over it. So it was just like, I dropped links to Highrise multiple times. Draft, I think, is in there. Like in that case, it was like, oh, okay. So you're not going to like screw with my article. But I've also published to places where not only do they advertise against it, but then they edit their own links into the article. They don't take away mine, but then they add their own little bits, things that make no sense. Like if I mention Paul Graham's name, they'll go link to another author who mentions Paul Graham. And it's just like, why? I didn't do that.
I actually had an argument so I write for Inc. Regularly, and they do that same thing. They embed links into your document, into your article. And with my previous editor, I told him I'm not writing for Inc. if they do that anymore, and so we had them stop. But I've switched editors since, and I just noticed that they're doing it again, so I got to talk to them about it again. but I'm very uncomfortable with it because it injects meaning into your piece. It's suggesting that I'm endorsing, that I have chosen to link up this other article, which I may or may not agree with. I don't even know what they're linking up. I actually think it's a really bad practice, and I think it's really unfair to writers.
Yep.
So anyway, I got to talk to my editor Inc. and tell them that's not cool for my pieces. I just don't like it. Doesn't feel right to me. So
yeah,
that kind of stuff is extra bad, I think, when you're syndicating, because really then your piece is not only like generating revenue for another company and they're not paying you for your work, it's also like distributing other pieces of work into your own, which often link off to their own articles. So it's actually like, it's a little link baity in some ways. It just doesn't feel right to me. I know those businesses are under a lot of pressure and everything, but it still just doesn't feel right as a choice.
Yeah.
Anyway,
you bring up, this is a delicate topic though too. Like because I agree with you. Like it does feel weird to be writing for these companies for free who are then making money. Hopefully enough money to run their own business. And then, they're getting all these people to do this for free. But it's also this area where, like, I don't know, getting exposure and opening yourself up to some kind of free things is actually like so beneficial. Like Tim Ferriss, I think, has written about this too. Like if you're struggling to build a network, if you find yourself, kind of like, you're getting out of college and you want to start meeting people, and a lot of people know, like, hey, it's a lot of the people to find really great teams to build products and to help think through ideas. And he's a big proponent of, go volunteer, go work for, go help a bunch of people, not for the expectation of income, but go help a bunch of people to kind of start making these connections and go volunteer for different groups or events that are happening. And it makes sense too. So it's a weird balance, because it's like, it's something that these companies can take advantage of, because if you recognize those people, you'll ask them to work for free, or you'll ask for their writing for free because they want that exposure. They want links to their stuff from their articles. It's tough.
It is. And everyone has to make their own choices, of course. It's just that the choice to participate in revenue that you might generate for the Huffington Post, or that I might generate for Time or whatever, you're not given a choice. Like, you're not given the option to participate in that. And again, it might only be $12 or $6, but whatever it is, you're basically doing work for free if you don't. I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's not even about the cash in that sense, in that money. It's not about the amount necessarily. It's just about doing free work.
Yeah.
I think free work should be a very personal choice for yourself. You should do work for yourself, or you should volunteer knowingly. But in this case, you're actually volunteering for a for-profit organization, and that's an unusual arrangement.
Right. Yeah.
So
these they might want to consider. I wonder if anybody's ever doing this, like giving people the option, like, hey, we could either, heavily promote your links in your Twitter account and encourage people to follow you so you can do some extra work, go, hey, syndicating, magazine, do a little extra work to try and get, because usually even these bylines are like minuscule font. They like do a really poor job of even actually promoting you.
Right. You're not being promoted.
Who wrote the article?
You're not being promoted. I mean, it's not for your benefit, basically. It's for
Right.
theirs. And that's okay. Like, that's what the offer is. It's just, I think, I don't know. It's just not, it doesn't seem like a very fair deal.
Yeah.
But at the very least, I did it and you're doing it. So like, we're still doing it. But it just one of those things that just crossed my mind a few times before I said yes.
Yeah.
That's all.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else is going on over there?
Just a bunch of internal things, and then I'm working on putting together the guide, the transition guide for customers on Basecamp Classic and today's Basecamp, which we're going to be renaming Basecamp 2. For those who want to choose to also use Basecamp 3, like use it in addition to what they're already using, or switch to it completely, it's they don't have to make the choice. They can do whatever they want, but I'm putting together all the documentation around that and sort of trying to approach it. I'm trying to figure out the best way to approach it. We learned a lot the last time we did this migration. I talked about this on the show yesterday, so I don't want to repeat myself too much, but there's a lot of like anxiety around this sort of thing, and I'm just trying to write it in a way that is as calming and as clear as possible, because we're not making there's no forced decisions. No one has to do anything. Everything can be exactly the same way it was. You can start to use Basecamp 3 in addition to what you're using. You can go entirely with Basecamp 3. The biggest question is around moving data. And we've chosen, for launch at least, not to allow people to move data from an earlier version of Basecamp to this Basecamp 3. It's something we might revisit 90 days down the road, 6 months down the road, later on. But the decision we made is to say, keep everything that's currently running where it's running. And then if you want to start new stuff in Basecamp 3, that's a good place to start new stuff. So basically, don't move the furniture around where you are, and then come to Basecamp 3 for new stuff if you choose, or you can use both, whatever you want. But nothing's being moved out from under you. And one of the things we learned last time was that when you make transition really easy, people end up having data in two places, and then actually that's where the real problem is. But people don't anticipate that problem ahead of time, so they think that they want to move everything. So I'm trying to figure out a way to explain like why you probably don't. But it's like just a wording thing. I got to kind of get it right so it doesn't seem like we're fighting against a natural instinct, but instead explaining from past experience why we think this is the better approach. And that once you get to know Basecamp 3, maybe that means after 90 days, or maybe that means after a few months of using it, then we might open up the migration path for people. So they know what it will look like when they move their data over. Because what ends up happening is, if you have something brand new and you move all your stuff over into it and it's very different from what you had before, and you try it for 3 or 4 days and you go, I don't like the new thing, I want to stay with the old thing. Well, now you've created stuff on the new thing, and that stuff may not map back directly to the old thing. So now you've got stuff in two places and you're stuck. Like we want to avoid that. To me, is the most costly mistake. So we want to avoid that, and that's why we're not allowing people to move until they get used to the new place, because then you'll have made your decision whether or not you want to stick with the new place or not. So it's more like suspending the opportunity to move stuff is sort of our golden path here, and then we can revisit it down the road. But anyway, just trying to write this all up and make it all clear and spell it all out.
Have you had a conversation with customers about with this language, and what has their reaction been? Like, have they then have you had a talk with them and they've gotten it? Like someone who's been kind of like, oh man, this sucks that I can't, upgrade or migrate. And you've had a conversation with them and they were like, oh, that makes sense. I get it. Or what has that reaction been like?
Yeah, both. I've had both. So I've talked to people who've been told like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I don't want to, rock the boat, leave things where they are. Makes sense to me. Maybe later I can move them. Let me just see what this new thing's all about. Like some people get that, and other people, just they haven't seen the new thing yet, so they don't. So there's natural anxiety attached to it. Like they haven't actually had the experience yet. So I find that people who haven't had the experience of the new thing yet, they're the ones who are especially anxious about it, because it's this big unknown, and like they don't realize that what they have is going to stay where it is, and everything's safe and nothing's going away. No rugs are being pulled out from anybody, and no one's being forced to move. Like until you just kind of experience that whole thing, that everything's okay, you just anticipate fear. And it's a natural thing in anything. It's like anytime you go into a new situation, people are anxious and there's anxiety around that process until you get in there. It's like you're like, oh my God, I don't want to go to this dinner party. I don't know anyone there. It's going to be horrible. And you get there and it's like, fine. But like no amount of sort of having someone talk you down off the ledge is going to have any effect, because you're just anxious about it flat out until you're there. So I think part of it is that, and I just want to make it clear that we will consider migration down the road, but we think the best path is for people to feel out the new place for a while, get used to the new place for a while from scratch, where there's no risk, see how it feels, And then if you like it down the road and you want to move stuff over, you at least know what it's going to look like when things are moved over. So that's,
and you'll have APIs. I guarantee someone is going to build a way. If you guys don't, someone else will build a way to do this migration.
Yep, totally.
It's just going to happen.
Yep.
What also, so I'm curious, so you just mentioned like the anxiety. Are you specifically seeing, because like we get this anxiety at Highrise all the time. Like we've talked about this, like we still have people who fear Highrise is shutting down. And it's like really hard to like message that it's not. Like somehow like the news that Highrise was spinning off caused some, this anxiety. And maybe it's because like there's this history of spin-offs and sunsetting software that has caused this. But it's like, I'm still just another person emailed me the other day and it was like, oh my gosh, you guys advertised you were shutting down. It's like, what are you talking about? Who, why would we advertise that? Who did this?
Yeah.
I can't, I'm blogging multiple times a day about what we're doing and new features, and I'm still having a hard time breaking through. So like, is that a little bit like, do they think, the current version of Basecamp BCX is shutting down?
Probably.
Like, is that the actual thing that needs to get like fixed?
Yeah, probably. That's a big core thing. So like, I'm going to try and be as absolutely clear as possible about that. And I think part of it is because, like you said, it's what we're doing and what we've done before is highly unusual. Most companies do not do what we do, which is we keep all previous major versions of Basecamp around forever. I mean, for as long as we're in business. So however long that is, decades, hopefully more.
Yeah.
Nothing goes away. No one is forced to make a change and nothing goes away. So, but that's unusual. And so you're fighting an uphill battle against that because people either don't believe it or they can't comprehend it, or they're well, eventually it's going to go away, right? No, eventually it's not. Basecamp Classic will not go away. If there's 3 customers using Basecamp Classic, it'll stick around for those 3 customers. Only until there's nobody left using something will we ever consider turning it off. Backpack's the same way. Campfire's the same way. These things will run indefinitely. As long as there's at least 1 customer on them. That's our commitment. And so, but again, it's an unusual stance, an unusual point of view to take. And so people just aren't necessarily comfortable, or they don't believe it, or they don't understand it, or whatever. They're like, surely it's going to, like, surely, you're not going to keep it around for 5 years. Yeah, no, we are. It will be around. Like, no, but come on, not really. Really, it will. It'll be around. Yeah. But it's hard. It's hard to get that across. So anyway, you just have to fight with that. But I think, everything has its costs and its trade-offs and its penalties and pros and cons. Like every situation, nothing is a perfect situation. So while we've chosen this path of no migration at the start, that's going to have a cost, right? People are going to want to do it. They're going to be upset that they can't do it. There's a cost to that. There's also a cost to doing it. Had we just decided to do it, then the cost is data in 2 places. I'm confused. I don't like this. I thought I did, but 2 weeks later, I don't like it. I want to move back. Well, now you can't quite because, for example, let's say you had automated check-ins running. Well, there's no such thing as automated check-ins in Basecamp 2. So like that data is going to be lost. And in Basecamp 3, you can assign to-dos to multiple people, and you can't do that in the previous Basecamp. So what happens to that data? So like that's a really big cost. That's actually, to me, a much bigger cost, which is being unable to map things back and losing stuff is the hugest cost. So we want to avoid that at all costs, which is why we've chosen to go in this direction. So everything has its trade-offs, and you just have to decide like which trade-offs are worth taking on, like which are the costs that you're willing to shoulder for people, and which ones you accept. And you can change some of these down the road and the whole thing. We can have a path to migration down the road if we decide to do that, etc. So you think it through and you make your point as best you can, and that's what I'm really working on, is honing the messaging just to make sure it's very, very clear for everybody, as clear as possible. And I'm even considering like doing some sort of a transition call. I don't even know how to do it, but like if you have any questions about it, I'll be doing a hangout 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock every day for 2 weeks. I don't even know. I haven't decided that, but like maybe there's some way we can talk it through, and maybe that's a more comfortable way of explaining the things. I don't really know, but the key is no one's losing anything and nothing's going away, and everything's just exactly as it was before. Plus now you have this new thing you can also use. So like it's all good news. It's just that it's not immediately obvious that it's good news if you're expecting a different outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all, but hey, that's what we're all paid to do. We got to make things good and clear for people.
Yeah. And I think, like you talked about yesterday, I mean, based on the previous experience, this makes the most sense. And I think people will get it.
Yeah. I mean, some people won't, and that's totally fine. I've already heard some feedback from some people who are very upset about it, like already, like some beta users. And I totally get that. But again, it's like, this is the thing. You can't make everybody happy in these situations. So you got to pick the course that has the least negative ramifications, and is the easiest to correct later. And like all those combinations of things, you want to pile those things up and make sure that side of the scale is
right,
is whatever, heavier or lighter, however the metaphor would go. And that's what we've decided to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. You're right. Like that's a good framework. The like you can always add this later, but like the destructive stuff, like that's something you can't like walk back from easily.
Right. So if you're going to optimize for change later, you want to look at things that are sort of additive, that you can allow people to do things later, versus rewinding things. Rewinding is really difficult when like, things don't line up perfectly. That's where things get really dicey and hairy. Like we saw this, like we lived through this. We had this happen with Basecamp Classic to BCX, is that people moved from Classic to BCX. They used BCX for 2 weeks. Some people didn't like it. They had data in 2 places and they wanted to pull it back, but the feature set was different, so it doesn't sync backwards. And now it's like you're in limbo. It's like this purgatory sort of state almost. You're like in this place that is not one or the other. And now you're really nervous because you don't know what to do. And we want to eliminate any moments like that.
Yeah.
So that's what we're aiming for. And like the way we're doing it does eliminate those moments, but still it just isn't immediately clear that that's the case if you haven't gone through it yet. So anyway, we're doing our best.
Yeah. Cool.
So that's what's on my mind.
Yeah. That's some heavy stuff though. Yeah. That's a tricky one.
Yeah, definitely. So anyway, I'm working on that. And that's kind of it for me. I thought we were going to talk some design stuff, but now we're almost out of time. So
I could even just bring this up quick. I don't even know. We started a little late. I guess I could bring this up, but it's like
sure.
So there's this. Okay, so I'll explain it in like this is a complicated little topic. So it's like, there's all these ways to manually forward in mail to Highrise, right? There's all those Dropbox addresses. And it's a little complicated just even before I started messing with things. Like there's personal Dropbox addresses that are, every user gets their own Dropbox address. That's what you can use to forward mail. But then there's variations of that Dropbox address. Like there's a task version where you can like attach, forward this in, but attach it to a task. There's little commands you could use within the email to like make it more private or to add a case.
Mm-hmm.
And so so there's all that. There's some, some complexity there. So we've also though made it easier to do things like forward mail to your personal accounts. Like, so now Gmail, you can turn on auto forwarding and you can set up all these rules to kind of forward a whole support box to Highrise. And that's been really useful for us. But we've done this, we don't have this concept of like an account-wide Dropbox, or we don't have this concept of mailboxes. So there's an interesting hack at the moment that we're using internally that anyone could use, but it's kind of janky. So for our support inbox, so right now we use Highrise for all of our customer support. We stopped using our current tool to do our current help desk because now we have that good morning. It's a nice queue to go through like all the customers that are waiting for stuff.
Yep.
What I did though was, because there is no like account-wide ability to forward in mail, there's only these users. before I was forwarding everything as my personal Dropbox. So all the mail looked like it was like John emailed Nate and it's in the queue, but it's like, no. He didn't really email Nate. He was trying to email support. But I just forwarded it to my personal Dropbox. So a hack that I did was I created a support user, and that support user gets their own personal Dropbox. And I logged in as the support user, went and grabbed that Dropbox address, and then use that in the forwarding rules. And you see, there's like all these steps. I had to create it, this fake user, log in as the fake user, get his data, and then use it to create these rules in Gmail. And so there's just decisions around this. It's just like, I don't want that. Like, that's not the thing I want in a help file. Like, it's so shitty.
Right.
But there's all sorts of like the easy thing I could do, which I'm tempted to do, and not just tempted, I think I'm going to do it just because it's so easy, is just display on the user page, display all the user Dropboxes. So it will remove the step of having to log in. So you could still do this hack that we're doing, and you could create a support user, and then you'll just have their Dropbox address. You don't actually have to go log in as them. It'll already be ready to go. So it just saves that step of having to log in. So the design will just put it at the bottom of each of the users. So an admin or IT administrator could go ahead and set this up without having to like do extra logging in as people.
Yep.
It's an easy win. I think I'm going to do it.
Well, it's more than that. It's also like a more secure setup because you're not encouraging people to log in as other people to get the drop. I mean, because that's like a pattern you probably don't want to encourage.
That's true.
Having to log in as someone else to get something, because then not only can you log in as someone else, but you can see notes that you may not have had permission to see before.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, yes, that's definitely an
It's like a nice side effect of making it simpler so people don't have to do that pattern. It's similar to, I've seen, I'm trying to remember the names of the products that do this. There's some products where you can like log in at, like you can see it from someone else's perspective. Like if you have a screen and there's like two versions of the screen, depending on if you're like person A or person B, you can assume the identity of person B without actually being them, but you can sort of preview what they're going to see. I think it might be Shopify or some of these places where like you can set up a store, but the setup of the store, like there's admin buttons everywhere and stuff, but it's not actually what the customers are going to see.
Sure.
So you can like flip to a different mode to see what the customers are going to see. This isn't quite the same thing, but without actually becoming a customer. In this case, you might be able to flip into someone else's identity without actually being them, but maybe just see a screen at a time or whatever. Anyway, I've seen some tools do that or use that pattern before.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting too. Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's fascinating too. Because there's other angles there. Like, we get this. This happens a lot. Where I mean, this is another conversation that like I'm not actually trying to solve at the moment. But we also do have these problems of like, and I'm sure maybe this comes up with you guys too. It's like a customer will leave and like they don't want to just delete the customer. There's still stuff that doesn't really like transfer over, right? They want to like go and look at all this person's old tasks, and they're not in like, the admin is paying for this account. These tasks do need to get transferred over to a new employee, and it's a weird scenario where like, how do we help you? Like we'll end up going onto a console and helping you move these things over. We'll tell you to like, well, you're gonna have to try and log in as this person and do it. It sucks. I'm sure there's some pathway there that makes this easier, but I don't know. Yeah, this Dropbox thing is confusing too. It's like, because there's more sophisticated things that we could consider and we should consider. It's just much more engineering effort to kind of maybe now invent this idea of like multiple mailboxes. I don't know. I could show you. Let's not do it today. We're running out of time. But I could show you tomorrow. We have like a concept already. It's like designed of kind of like creating a mailbox that like kind of guides you through setting up like a more a nice approach to kind of setting up a mailbox that you're sharing with the whole team. But it's just more engineering effort. And it's like it's one of those things where I have to weigh like, well, we can get a quick win done now and start communicating it to users, and they'll be able to use it tomorrow. Or I have to like put this on the to-do list, and I don't know when it's going to get done, and it's going to be a lot of effort to like actually get it to fruition.
Well, we're going to be exploring. We have we mocked up a feature in Basecamp 3, which we didn't launch. We didn't fully build, but it has to do with email inboxes and stuff. So it might be an interesting thing to share notes on both ways.
Yeah.
And see if there's some shared experiences we can both take away from that process. Because anyway, yeah, we can go over that another time, but it's something we'd explored early on as well.
Okay. So yeah, even tomorrow and later. Yeah. That's a good idea.
Cool.
Okay, man.
Alrighty. Well, that's it. Good show. Please, everybody, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We just passed 1,200, I believe. We're maybe well past that now. I haven't checked this morning. But it's great to have everybody following us, and it's cool to hear feedback on Twitter from people saying they enjoy the show. I'm seeing more and more people mention the show, which is really awesome. Someone even put a website together for the show. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. We should. There's been a couple things like that. We should figure out how to promote that, I guess.
Yeah.
But yes, there's like a whole GitHub repository, I believe, of our shows.
Oh, I didn't
like
see
our
that.
shows or something.
Yeah, I didn't see the GitHub repo, but that's cool. Yeah, so thanks for the enthusiasm. We'll keep it going, and we'll talk to everybody tomorrow.
Bye, guys. Thank
Later.
you.